Welcome back. Today I'm working on the truck which we bought to help alleviate the logistics issues of living on a small island. It's an ex-Royal Engineers truck and the deck of the box isn't looking so great. We've got a lot of moisture in the truck, which makes it well suited to us as we have the same problem with the watermill. The truck bed also has some stains that smell like diesel and hydraulic fluid. Some of the stains make it all the way through to the bottom of the deck. We want to seal the deck of the truck so when we move house our possessions do not get wet or soak up the other fluids in the wood. The deck is exposed underneath, so when driving on wet roads it would be possible to get water wicking up through the boards and into the boxes or furniture on top. My first task with the truck box is to try to get some of the moisture out. If the wood is wet, it's going to be a pain to sand and impossible to apply finish to. I placed a little heater in the box, hoping to get the temperature up enough to encourage some evaporation. What I did not expect was the amount of condensation on the roof. The roof is just thin fiberglass, so it's a great spot for warm, moist air to condense, and then drip straight back onto the deck. Luckily, we recently took delivery of a powerful wet and dry vacuum, which we bought for cleaning up around the mill. I decided to vacuum the roof dry to catch as much moisture as possible. I tried using a towel at one point, but it got soaking wet and heavy in no time. Keep in mind that it's only about 3 degrees outside, so that water is cold. Vacuuming out the water worked surprisingly well. Every 30 minutes or so while I was drying the floors, I'd have to vacuum the roof again to collect more condensation. I also found that the braces for the roof had loads of water between the fiberglass and the metal. Moisture-laden air is able to make it between the fiberglass and metal to condense, and then the water cannot escape. Initially, I worked my way along with the vacuum cleaner, sucking water out of every small hole I could find in the fiberglass. This was a bit too slow going for my liking, so I started making very small holes into the fiberglass with a drill, just enough to perforate it. Then another hole nearby to allow air to get sucked in. This way I could use the vacuum in the lower hole with the upper flow allowing airflow to drag the water into the vacuum. It seemed to work well. The heater didn't seem to be making much progress drying the wood, as in some areas it was rather wet. I pulled out a hot air gun and blasted the wet patches directly to evaporate the water quickly. With particularly wet areas, I'd leave the heat gun lying on its side blowing over the general area while I vacuumed the roof. This took a couple of days, returning regularly to the same spots to dry out the fresh moisture which had risen up through the wood. The truck is not perfectly sealed, and with a forecast for rain, we decided to put a tarp over the back of the truck. This would allow me to work with the rear roll door open and also prevent rain that hits the back door from rolling down and pulling at the back seal. Because our drive is on an angle, this water would run into the truck. We used a couple of ratchet straps to secure the tarp to the truck body, and it's held up pretty well with the rain, wind and snow. By the point I was satisfied with how dry the wood was, I'd collected a couple of litres of water in the vacuum from clearing the condensation on the roof. The truck deck planks are not flat. Each board is cupped, and some boards almost look like they are wedge-shaped rather than flat, with one side consistently higher than the other. Looking under the truck, they all seem to be sitting relatively flat on the metal supports below. Therefore, a lot of sanding is in order. This would also help me clear off some of the deposits and stains on the top of the wood. The roughest grit sandpaper I had on hand was only 120 grit. Great for rough sanding a nice piece of finished woodwork, but pretty useless for sanding the whole truck deck. I found some 40 grit sandpaper discs on Amazon and immediately ordered them, but then I noticed 24 grit sanding belts. That sounded a lot more like what I needed. But I don't have a belt sander, so I ordered a relatively cheap one. I'm sure we'll have plenty of need for it on the watermill restoration. The 24 grit belts are quite a workout. They strip the wood nice and fast, but need a lot of force to hold in place and to apply pressure so they continue cutting well. I ended up getting pretty tired from this after a few hours. The sand also generated an incredible amount of dust. As I got fatigued from sanding, I'd switched to vacuuming up the debris to give my body a bit of a break, and the change of activity really helped. This also had the advantage of letting me see what I was doing, as the floor quickly became covered in a thick layer of debris. I found it easier to face the sander towards me and then just brace myself against the front of it, letting the force of it driving into me push it down at the deck. This saved a lot of effort on clearing the highest sections of the ridges. However, I definitely needed to use it properly occasionally to feel for high spots that needed work. The belt was just long enough to span a full plank width, allowing me to hit 2 ridges at once to flatten the deck down evenly. The belts really don't like touching anything metal. One touch and pretty much instantly the belt comes apart. This didn't turn out to be so bad, as the belts did wear out rather fast and need regular changing anyway. The wood of the truck deck looks, smells, and feels like a tropical hardwood. It's very stringy, resinous, and tough. I guess that's fairly abusive on the abrasive in the belt. After I ran out of 24 grit belts, I switched to 40 grit belts while I waited for more 24 grit sandpaper to arrive. A fresh 40 grit belt was just as fast as a 10 to 20 minute old 24 grit belt, though also wore out quickly. With a bunch of new 24 grit belts, I was able to make quick work of the remaining areas of the deck. I wasn't able to get rid of all the spills and stains on the wood, but I was able to flatten it out at least. After watching the earlier videos, many people have made suggestions about PPE. I did have a nice trend air filter helmet, which I got on special, but we did not have room in the car to take it with us on our first trip up to the mill. It's a little noisy and kinda awkward for working on something you lean over. It's definitely an effective option for dust, keeping my glasses clean and also providing a nice bit of airflow. My 3M half mask respirators catch more of the finer dust, but do not work as well with a beard as the positive pressure helmet. The half masks also get uncomfortable in their own way. After a day of sanding the truck bed, the mask was completely covered in dust on top, and the filters certainly showed how much dust would have been in my nose without it. The new vacuum also worked very well. I'm glad I was able to find a model with a pre-filter that protects the main particulate filter from instantly clogging up. By the end of sanding the deck, I had a completely full vacuum, yet the main filter looked basically pristine. Next week, I'll be sealing the truck bed to prevent water and hydraulic fluid from preventing the final finish from curing. I think you'll find my solution to the problem interesting and probably get a laugh out of my application method for the final finish.